We are seeing, Karen, some recovery in key markets already. So if you look at our revenue in organic sales in the Americas, we were actually up 4% in the quarter. If you look at our revenue in China, we were up 5% organically in the quarter. Where we still see some challenges is in Europe, where our revenue was down 13% in the quarter, roughly half of that pricing, roughly half of that volumes. So Europe still needs a bit more time to come out of this.
A couple of themes that seem to be cropping up in Clariant numbers and Covestro today, both of you talking about raw material prices being lower, but also the overall pricing regime being lower. Is there some pressure to pass on those lower costs to clients at this stage?
Yeah, if you look at our margins, we are very pleased with our profitability. So in the first quarter, we delivered an EBITDA margin of 17.1%, significantly up from prior year at 13.9%. That margin improvement comes from, first of all, the successful delivery of our cost improvement program. So we have actually now achieved more than 80% of our annual cost savings target of 175 million Swiss francs. But to your point, we also have seen margin expansion from lower raw materials. If you look year on year, our raw material prices have come down by 12%. And if you look at our pricing, we've actually come down by 5% in local currency. So clearly some margin expansion there. We are targeting, obviously, to hold on to that as much as possible. But it is fair to say that if you look at our formula-based price contracts, we will have to give some of that back to our customers.
Conrad, lovely to see you. Fascinating listening to you and Karen just talking there. And one thing piqued my interest. You said Europe is still the underwhelming one, half on price, half on volumes, 13% decline as well. Why isn't Europe the kind of forerunner of what's going on the rest of the world globally, rather than actually the one more region you think is going to recover? I guess what I'm asking is, why are you seeing a glass half full rather than the glass half empty in terms of what happens next?
Yeah, well, let me first say, Steve, I see the glass half full for Europe as well. But let's keep in mind, Europe has some fundamental issues to work through. Let's also be realistic. In the last 2 years, some of the industry simply has left Europe and is not coming back. In chemicals, if you look at the high energy sectors, some of that actually has left Europe. But I will say, if you look at the challenges Europe had about a year ago, the energy prices have actually improved significantly, with LNG gas prices now around 30 euros per megawatt hour, much more similar to the level before the brutal invasion of Russia in Ukraine. There are some more fundamental issues. If you look at Europe for industrial production to recover, there are labor markets which are tight. Believe it or not, but even in the current environment, it is challenging to find operators to run chemical plants. And this is the result of very tight migration policies in recent years that have been more political rather than based on economic rationale. And finally, on legislation, environmental legislation, there's currently not a level playing field, particularly not in comparison with the United States, where companies actually receive a tax credit for every ton of carbon that they reduce from their process, where in Europe, it's actually a taxation on carbon emissions.